Live.
Welcome everyone to the first NDP leadership debate. My name is Alexandre Boulris and I'm the MP for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie here in Montreal. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are located on Indigenous unceded territory. We recognize that the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation are the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Historically, Montreal has already been known as a gathering place for many First Nations, and today a diverse Indigenous population as well as other peoples reside here. And it's in the spirit of respect for connections to the past, present, and future that we recognize the ongoing relationships between Indigenous peoples and all other members of the Montreal community. As Mark Carney's Liberals increasingly govern like Conservatives, the time has come for New Democrats to discuss how best to strengthen our party and reach out to those who share our values of social, environmental, and economic justice. An economy that includes everyone. Without further ado, I hand the floor now to Carl Bélanger, who will moderate tonight's debate. Good evening, everyone, to all those who are watching from home.
Salut tout le monde. Mon nom c'est Yves Engler. Ça c'est moi j'aimerais être dans le débat. Je suis candidat aux chefferies du NPD, mais le parti nous a refusé d'être dans le débat. Puis on va faire ce soir, on va faire un peu de commentaires au moment du débat. Je vais le faire pour la plupart en anglais parce que je sais que la majorité des gens qui sont en train de nous écouter sont des anglophones hors du Québec. Mais je vais peut-être parler un peu en français à différents moments dans la discussion. On va être un peu pas trop sérieux ce soir, mais on va commencer avec une petite carte de bingo. So I thought I would start off with some words that we probably won't hear tonight. First word, capitalism. People can keep score at home if you want. I think the first word that we're probably not going to see is capitalism. Tar sands, colonialism, abolish billionaires, Venezuela, workplace democracy, land back, Haiti, salary doctors, no more fee for service, out of NATO, abolish tuition, cooperatize real estate investment trusts, imperialism, expropriation, patriarchy, socialism, cut military spending, Gaza Holocaust, and Justin Bieber. So if you're keeping score at home, if you put down all those words, let's see if we will hear some of those words during this debate tonight. So I'll be interjecting intermittently, depending on different developments and commentary.
answer questions in the language in which they will be
So
answered.
what do we think they are going to say? What are some words that we do think that they're going to say? I have a beer here. When should I drink?
With this rule, I'll have to interrupt them.
Anytime they say working together, take a drink.
Will be asked in French, and for open debate, we'll ask them preferably to answer.
You heard a little yell there. Our 8-year-old is sick.
The order of the opening remarks, the positions on the panel, and the closing remarks were determined by a random draw. We'll begin with Heather McPherson.
Eve, you didn't make it into the draw.
In Canada,
I guess it wasn't that random.
many families are doing everything they should, but they are still having a hard time nonetheless. They need a party that stands up for them. That is the NDP. And it must again be the NDP.
Should we flip to the French version to see how bad her French is?
I actually would like to hear the French version.
I can tell you that last night it was not good. Really not good.
A leader who will work with the base and has the sufficient experience.
No, people that can speak French aren't allowed in this debate.
Now, you're working much too hard, and nonetheless, you're having a hard time making ends meet. And you know why? Because a handful of large corporations are increasing the price of everything, filling their pockets in the process. In this context of a crisis, we can't use the same old prudent recipe or formula we had with the NDP in the past. We have to have a tax on wealth. We need public options, a new Green Deal for Canada. These are pragmatic solutions and popular solutions as well. These solutions will meet this crisis, the daily emergencies, rally our base, build the movement again, and win. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. McQuail.
Public option is a good idea, but I think we can go a lot further than that.
Biological farmer. I'm a militant for political economic justice. The 4 R's are my theme: redistribution, regeneration, and a redesign. We represent a premiere. The majority-based uninominal system needs to be replacement. We need proportional replacement in our electoral system to rebuild a government which is working for the people and for the environment as well. Thank you, Mr. McQuail.
You know, Tony was the only candidate that had the courage to respond to us about whether or not you should be allowed in this race.
My life in Vancouver, working on the docks. I'm defending the workers so that they can live with a good wage and in all due dignity. Today, wealth is filling the pockets while the rest of the people are paying the price. I understand the challenges facing real people. NDP was founded to give voice to workers. And this is what I want to bring back to the fore. If you want an NDP that wins, one that's ready to fight, I'm your guy. And now, Tennille Johnston. Good evening, my name is Tennille Johnson, a Likashtal woman, an Indigenous person from Campbell River in BC. I'm a mother, a social worker, and a municipal councillor as well. And now I'm running to become the leader of the NDP. We need a leader who understands the difficulties Canadians are facing. And I will learn French because it's very important to do that. Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Well, the ice has been broken. The debate has been launched. I would like to remind everyone of the rules for questions. Each candidate will have 45 seconds to respond to the question.
Rule 1, no Yves Engler.
Open debate afterwards for 8 minutes.
English. And here's the questions. We know that there is a cost of living crisis. Millions of Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. The price of essentials, the price of food, the price of many goods continue to rise. Housing comes to mind, of course. Income inequality is at record levels. Yet in the last election, the NDP came forward with many proposals, ideas like investments
abolish
in
billionaires,
market housing, cap on grocery prices, but instead they chose Mark Carney. So which policy proposal are you putting forward to address the cost of living crisis? And I'm going to start with Mr. Ashton.
The notion that the NDP put forward a real alternative is not serious.
But we're getting squeezed while billionaires are getting cashing in. We, when I get voted in as leader of the party, we're going to put caps on the prices of groceries, on the internet that we all use, and on our cell phone bills. You see, my good jobs promise guarantees a good job for everybody that wants one.
Bravo.
But most importantly,
he read your universal jobs plan.
And we're going to take
it's a good proposal.
Whatever power from the CEOs that we
I
can
mean,
take
plenty of candidates have been borrowing from your platform. Like, that's a good thing.
Merci,
Very
Mr.
good
Ashton.
thing.
It's now
Thank you, Mr. Ashton.
Thank you. We need to approach this at all levels from every way we can, including a guaranteed livable basic income, right to a national housing that's public, whether it's co-op or other public models. We need to invest in housing that's accessible. We need to help Canada feed Canadians. We need to break down interprovincial trade barriers for food producers and be able to feed ourselves through our own agricultural means. We have such an amazing opportunity with so many farmers, and Tony will probably speak to this later, where we have more than enough folks doing the great work to feed our country, but we have to enable them to do it. It was great to see other barriers broken down between provinces, but they left food behind. We need our food.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, your turn.
The cost of living is not an issue. It's an emergency, and it's an emergency caused by market failure. What else to call it when Galen Weston is worth $18 billion and Canadians are skipping meals to feed their kids? The market is failing to provide essentials at a price that people can afford. And in an emergency, we expect the government to step in. That means a public option for each of these necessities. Price caps, sure, to stabilize the price of groceries, but then public grocery stores to lower them. A public provider for phones and internet, a public housing developer and construction companies to build 1 million non-market homes. Public is not a dirty word. It's how we guarantee Canadians a dignified life.
Thank you.
He's spot on with bringing SaskTel across the country and building large number of homes, but we got to talk about targeting the corporate landlords, the real estate investment trusts, turning those into co-ops.
Now to help those Canadians include things like putting in place my plan for housing, and that starts with declaring a national housing emergency so that we can mobilize the funds.
She took that one from us.
To build homes so people have somewhere to live, so young people
But she's
have a
not
shot
actually
home,
proposing
so
to do anything with emergency powers. She's just using this as a buzzword. It's
housing like co-ops, housing
I would ask her what she plans to do with these emergency powers. Yves said he wants to declare a housing emergency so that we can expropriate the real estate investment trust. If we're not doing that, what's the point of declaring a state of emergency? Everything she's proposed is stuff that can be done through normal laws.
But unless we start fixing our relationship with the first-past-the-post electoral system, none of this will come to pass. It certainly hasn't in the last 45 years in a complete, comprehensive, and well-organized way, because we sometimes get stuff in through a minority government situation. We have to deal with first past the post, and that's why my first R is representation so that actually we figure out how to get a hold of the levers of power and then bring in proportional representation so that there is some hope that the great ideas we have and are starting to put forward don't get disappeared with another phony majority government that isn't ours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McQuail. It's now time to open the debate to all contestants. We have 8 minutes, and we've heard a lot about problems, but I'd like to hear more about concrete solution. Ms. McPherson.
So I have a
Abolish
jobs
tuition.
plan for young people. We know right now there is a crisis for employment for young people across this country, and we could put a plan in place. We could put a plan in place that made sure that, we could use the Canada Summers Job Program, but make it year-round. Invest in a green climate core program, the care economy, in trades, in careers that young people can start on. Put a bursary in place, a student grant to help folks with apprenticeship, or starting their university or their college career. I think that would be a great solution to get young people working.
Anyone disagree?
Maybe just not necessarily disagree, but go one step further. I think we need free post-secondary education. This has been
Bravo.
Yay to Neil.
something I've been trying to champion for probably about 20 years since I was a part of the student movement. We have to have free post-secondary education. We have an insane amount of pressure on our economy because we don't have people to fill the jobs that we want to fill. And students can't go into post-secondary education and then graduate with a mountain of debt and then try to survive in the world that we have today. So free post-secondary education would provide that pathway for young people to go into the professions that they want to go into and not just what they have, to go into due to the pressures of the cost of living.
Carl, what about all the people with foreign degrees that are qualified, doctors, engineers, but they can't get in because these associations won't let them in?
We live in a society that is awash in wealth. Big banks in Canada made
Abolish
$50
billionaires.
billion
Abolish 100 millionaires.
last year. Big oil made $40 billion just a few years before that. We need a government that has the courage to fight on behalf of all of us and go and get the money where it is. So just
expropriate
as
now. Expropriate. We want to hear that.
Market failure. We need the government to
Expropriate
step up
the
and step in.
billionaires.
We also need a 1% on the 1%. We're proposing a wealth tax of 1% on the 1%. Just that little bit, which Galen Weston is not even going to notice. A rounding error on his household budget could generate $25 to $40 billion a year. We need to go get that money and redistribute it in the form of universal public services for everyone.
I agree with universal public services for sure, but we have to talk about challenging capitalist rule. The notion that
21-year-old daughter living
Galen
at home
Weston
right
can
now,
control the
Madison's her name.
livelihoods of
And she'll
thousands
never
of
be
people
able
is
to move out,
absolutely not
which is
acceptable.
fine. I love her dearly, but but what we're looking at is houses that are unaffordable, rents that are unaffordable. And then you compound that with the price of food. That's why an NDP led by me would be pushing caps on grocery prices. We have to triple the amount of houses that we build in this country. Public houses, co-op style. Because that's the only way we're going to make life affordable for young people, as well as people my age. We also have to look at the Bank of Canada. See, the Bank of Canada has a single mandate right now, and that's to lower inflation. But who cares about a low inflation rate if we have no jobs? So the second point that we're going to be making the Bank of Canada look at is looking at jobs.
Full employment.
A promise for every working Canadian to have a job. Those are the two promises that we're going to make sure that the Bank of Canada leans on to help deal with the affordability crisis in this country.
Mr. Carl,
even the U.S.
we have
Federal
to help
Reserve
people
includes
understand the
employment.
obscene discrepancy of wealth in our society. And if I told you you had 1 million seconds to live, you'd have 11 days. But if I told you you had 1 billion seconds to live, you'd have 31 years. And if I looked at how people are living on the street in Ottawa when we're at the CLC forum, they don't have any seconds to live. So, yes, we need a fair tax system. We need to go after the offshore tax havens. I think we need a much more progressive income tax as well as a more significantly progressive wealth tax. We've been in a society where the economists and the elites of society have really built a very effective wealth accumulating system or a concentrating system. We need to be talking about how we create a distributive economy where the wealth that's created by the 99% actually gets to stay with most of them and doesn't just get sucked up to the center.
Tony, that's exactly why we have to talk about the role of the government and the public sector and public ownership. We have a situation
That's why we have to
where
talk
Carney's
about
only
capitalism.
idea is to give our money to
Piketty
corporations to
talks
hope
about
that
this
the market
capitalism
somehow fixes the
inherently
problem. That's what his
concentrates
big new
wealth.
housing agency
Come on,
and
Avi,
housing
you know
plan is
that.
all about. Right now, we have housing starts slowing down and construction workers being laid off. The market is failing us on every front, and that's why the government has to pick up the ball and put those construction workers back to work with public construction companies and a public housing developer. We cannot expect the market to solve these problems.
I mean,
we need more investment in
billions of
public
dollars
housing,
readily available. We can stop
more
funding
investment
fossil
in
fuel industries.
infrastructure,
We can
create
take that
jobs.
$18 billion back and actually put it into
100%.
good public programs. We can put it into healthcare. We can change what our country looks like if we stop providing grants to major profiteering industries. It would change the way our country functions from every level. And just a quick note here, we just saw a Liberal quit today because Mark Carney decided to sign an MOU with Alberta to push a pipeline through my province of BC. And that will never
Shame.
happen under my watch, ever.
Shame, Mark Carney.
Well said to Neil.
Yeah. And the thing about
That's right, Tennille.
the pipelines, I wish we could get a refund on the pipeline the Liberal government bought last time. I mean, I had a Liberal saying, we're going to use the money we make on this pipeline and use it to fight climate change. I said, that's like having a drug dealer saying, we're going to sell this dope and start a rehab program. Like, it is just insane where we are sending our expenditures. And the idea that a liquefied natural gas terminal, a pipeline, and more mines are going to create a nation-building project when what we need is investment in what people need across this nation is just ridiculous. And I mean, we have the ideas for what to do, but to do it, we have to get into government.
All right, we have about 90 seconds left, so Ms. McPherson and then Mr. Ashton.
Thank you.
We
And
have
you
to
know,
talk
one of
about
the
shutting
big
down the tar
nation-building
sands.
projects
I'm
that we could
sorry,
be
that has to
investing
be on the
in is
agenda.
investing
Whether it's 2
in
years, 10
housing,
years, 5 years.
investing in healthcare. You know, healthcare is a nation-building
She
project.
sure
And when I
wants
see
to
what
turn
Danielle
away from that
Smith
talk
is
about
doing in the
pipeline,
province of
doesn't she?
Alberta to
What about the pipeline,
fundamentally
Heather?
change the
That's
direction of
what we're
healthcare in
talking
this
about.
country, to privatize
The
our
pipeline.
system, to take
I think her
away
husband
the
has some
single-payer
interest in the
system that so
pipeline
many
expansion.
Canadians cherish and depend upon. That's a project we should be fighting for, is our healthcare system, our public, universal, single-payer healthcare system.
Mr. Ashton, you have the last word on this topic.
Les gens sont tannés, et moi aussi.
People are fed up.
Figured I'd slip
Carl,
that
you're
one
supposed to reward him for this effort.
I know, I should give him bonus points, right?
So look, if we want change,
Je
serious
pense
change
qu'il
to
a,
happen in
je
this
pense qu'il a
country,
dit 5 mots là.
we have
Je
to
suis pas
vote for the
certain
party of
c'était-
change. The
c'était plus
conservatives
que,
and the liberals, every
4,
time each one of them are in
10,
power, they
mots,
say,
je
we're
sais
the
pas.
party of change, vote for us. They're not the change. They're one and the same. We can see how
Is it-
Carney's running the country right now.
Are they
I
actually
wouldn't
not
even
debating in
classify
French?
him
Is
as
this
a
not
small
happening
C
in French? Are we
conservative.
just getting some kind
That guy's a bigger C than
like
Mulrooney was.
feed that sounds exactly like
We
or
must
I'm
vote
confused.
NDP, MPD, for change in this country. That's what we have to do. So we can take these plans that we're putting forward and put them
It seems like
together to
some are
make life
speaking in
better for
French and some are
Canadians.
speaking in English.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Ashton.
Okay.
On va passer maintenant en français.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashton. We're going to move on in French now. So we're going to speak about Indigenous justice and reconciliation. It's a huge topic, of course, but we know that the New Democrats have often worked on these Indigenous issues in the past, notably through Ed Broadbent, who
Gustafson
fought to
Lake, it was an
include
NDP
Indigenous
government
and
that
treaty
sent in the
rights in
RCMP. There's a bit of a
35
history of the NDP
Charter
supporting
of Rights and
colonialism.
Freedoms. Now, Mark Carney is
Even
moving
David Eby
forward
going
with a
along
budget
with
that
the
cuts funding
targeting
for
of
Indigenous
the
programs and
right-wing
services
backlash
and
against a very
legislation that
reasonable
could
court decision
violate
around
the
Cowichan
government's obligation to
in Richmond.
obtain,
There's a history of the NDP aligning with
the
colonialism.
free, prior, and informed consent in major decisions. So we're going to start with Ms. Johnston. How do you think the federal government should advance reconciliation and justice for Indigenous peoples? So let's stop paternalism towards First Nations. Reconciliation. We must guarantee access to drinking water to Indigenous nations. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
It's a real shame that that hasn't been
is
dealt with after
huge. What should the federal
many
government
years.
do? Well,
Promises
under
from Trudeau.
Carney, reconciliation is moving backwards. These projects are ignoring the Indigenous projects that are written in the law. and are not obtaining free, prior, and informed consent. And it's about finding each missing woman and disappeared Indigenous.
No. Hold on 1 second.
À la justice pour les femmes et les filles autochtones disparues et assassinées. Seulement, le NPD est concrètement engagé envers la vraie réconciliation. Par exemple, pour les logements, on doit s'assurer que les solutions de logement soient culturellement adaptées et durables.
Okay, so they have
Merci, Mme McPherson. Monsieur McQuail, quelle est votre vision, vous, pour faire progresser la réconciliation?
Well, abroger le projet de loi 600 et mettre en œuvre de la recommandation essentielle du rapport de la Commission et Vérité et Réconciliation.
Très bien. Monsieur Ashton, à votre tour maintenant sur cette question de réconciliation et ce que devrait faire le gouvernement fédéral.
Oui, merci. C'est important pour moi. Travailler d'égal à égal, toujours respecter les droits des Autochtones, toujours respecter les droits au consentement libre, préalable et éclairé, investir dans les infrastructures des communautés autochtones, mettre en place tous les appels à la justice et à l'action des commissions publiques.
Alors voilà, c'est un vaste projet, c'est un vaste chantier. On a parlé du rapport de la commission, bien sûr. Alors, c'est maintenant le temps pour vous de débattre entre vous de cette question de la réconciliation. Qui veut commencer? Monsieur Lewis, peut-être.
Il faut dire que pendant que le gouvernement Carney recule, le leadership sur cette fiche des droits des Autochtones, c'est avec le NPD. I'm thinking of Leah Gazan.
Je pense à Elia Kazan qui dit il faut mener les choses en termes du projet de loi C5. En ce moment, les 16 jours de militantisme sur la violence axée sur les sexes, c'est un projet qui a vraiment bouffé l'oxygène. Il y a des camps qui sont situés
we got a couple sentences
These
in there.
fundamental things are solutions for the crises in Indigenous communities.
A couple sentences in where?
When we get into the conversations about law and abstract principles like reconciliation.
Je rappelle que
about land back?
So I'd like to remind you that
How about
I didn't hear
shut down
anyone
the
say
car
land
signs?
back.
in French, but the open debate can happen in both languages. So Ms. McPherson and then Ms. Johnston. Thank you so much. And clearly, no one can build without the agreement of First Nations. For instance, for each project,
N'arriva pas
did not obtain the agreement of First Nations, and the First Nations are the stewards of the land, and it is necessary for each project to obtain consent from Indigenous peoples. For me,
Free, prior,
That's
informed consent is
why
not sufficient.
Bill
If you
C5
destroy people's
is terrible.
political systems, you steal their land, you destroy their
Nations
capacity
have
to have an
tons
economy,
of
and then you
shovel-ready
say, oh, well, how about
projects
this
that
extractive
can not only
project?
allow our
That's
economy
not
to
a free,
thrive,
prior,
but
informed
create
consent.
hundreds of thousands of jobs, and arguably help save our planet. We need to enable our nations in a way with our parties so that we're seeing them as the governments that they are. We are not opening a pathway so that our nations can contribute in our party in a way that's meaningful, true, honest, and supported, and we need to do that work. We need to close the infrastructure gap. If we close the infrastructure gap, that alone is going to bring such an amazing economy through Canada. But we're not doing it. We're approaching nations with projects that we think are best for them versus sitting down and saying, what do you have on your books? What are you ready to go with? And let's partner on that and let's bring that forward. Our nations are a huge asset in this country and we don't use them as that asset.
Monsieur McQuail, je vous vois hocher de la tête. Là. Vous êtes d'accord?
Well, my friend,
do you agree?
Address this, but I was at a conference in October that included Indigenous representatives talking about the things that they would like to do in terms of agriculture in their communities, environment, housing.
No.
As we need to do across Canada, we need to talk to people in their communities, find out the context of their needs and what they think could solve their problems. I'm a farmer. I'm a black wire and bale twine kind of guy, and fixing problems and dealing with things is what I do daily on my farm. It's what people do on their own communities. The federal government could be helping and supporting communities, both Indigenous and others across the country, as a way of building nation and dealing with the infrastructure they need, the way they need to create greater food security, the way they need to create housing. So those are the things that I think a federal government could be doing if it truly wanted to build nations, and that it would be beneficial to our Indigenous communities across the country.
So much of Canada's land is crown land. Land back should be easy to do and should be moved quickly. And also the whole question of nation-to-nation relationship is absolutely essential.
The Northern Gateway
Ottawa
pipeline,
has to
which was shut
absolutely
down on environmental and Indigenous
deal
rights
with each nation
concerns
and their
many years
different
ago.
legitimate
And of course, there's no
concerns
business
properly, and not
proponent
just with
for
the
it.
band cancel
And the pipeline
structure,
itself may be a
also with
distraction.
traditional
I didn't get a
elder
chance to talk
structures,
about that
political
later.
leadership.
But I remember the community, Indigenous community in Bella Bella, when the Northern Gateway pipeline was proposed, and the environmental review panel went up to that community, and there were kids, 11, 12 years old, who found a new lease on life, who found reason and purpose and joy and collective struggle in resisting that pipeline. They made beautiful handmade signs, and they lined the little road from the small airport in Bella Bella when the review panel came to town. Do you remember this? And those folks from Ottawa went by in their cars. Someone got upset and banged a door or a window, and they were so afraid for their lives that they went back to the airport and they canceled the hearing. And those young people beat that pipeline, and they found a new lease on life and a new purpose in their communities, and we are going to ask them to fight it again? Completely unacceptable.
Unacceptable. Agreed, completely. But we have to go further than that with the pipelines. We have to talk about getting rid of pipelines as well that are currently exist as part of transitioning off of the tar sands.
Trying to learn. In regards to this, I don't have all the answers for working with or helping make life better for the Indigenous nations across this country, but what we all have to be willing to commit to is to listen, learn, and act. And, it's with, like everybody said, with leaders like Leah and Lori and others, and Tennille. This is working together and understanding the issues and actually fixing them, not just playing lip service like liberals and conservatives do, actually doing justice to the injustices that have been done for a very long time.
Très bien. Il nous reste environ 1 minute. J'ai Mme McPherson et Mme Johnston qui voudraient...
Ms. McPherson and Mr. Johnston. Yes, briefly. But it's essential that the voice of Indigenous persons should be heard. They need to participate. It's essential to have their voice within our party. And this is why, when I saw the work, and Tennille Johnson, each member of Parliament is working for the same goal, and it's important. Each MP must work together. We need collective efforts. Ms. Johnston?
Something simple like making sure that there are ballot boxes in every nation's community across this country is something very simple that we can do as the NDP, and not just do it because we're hoping for a vote. Do it because it's the right thing to do.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. C'est ce qui conclut cette section sur la justice.
Thank you.
We have to recognize that this land was stolen. That's premise number one. Underlying title is Aboriginal title. We have stolen this land. Whether there's going to be a full land back, that's a discussion. But we have to recognize the fundamental injustice that is historic and ongoing.
A single seat only. Mr. Bouliris was with us earlier, 1 out of 78. So here's the question, and it's very simple, and for most of you, it's the first time we'll be hearing from you on this topic. Why is it that there's only one NDP seat in Quebec? And what are you proposing we do to change this to win further seats?
Il n'y a pas de candidat qui parle français. Parce qu'il n'y a pas de candidat qui parle français dans le débat des chefferies à Montréal.
Difficult in Quebec. The rent is through the roof now. University tuition is too expensive, and many people can't find a family physician, and some physicians are leaving. Quebecers are looking for truly progressive solutions. They want bold ideas, public options for groceries, for housing, for cell phone services. They don't want dirty pipelines, not here, not elsewhere. They want solidarity rather than blaming the most vulnerable members of society. Here in Quebec, we have to take those seats. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, Ms. McPherson. Our party cannot find its way back to power without Quebec. I'd like to thank my friend and colleague Yves Engler for his work here in Quebec. And he mustn't remain alone here in Quebec. I know that I have to work on my French, I know, but already I've gone knocking on doors and I've met with members all across the province. We have to be there, we have to be present. Our party is strong because we are close to our communities. Thank you. Mr. McQuail now?
Not sure what that meant.
If we want to win the 99%, we have to work with the other parties who have a progressive and green view. We have to build a coalition, a progressive and green-centered coalition to win here in Quebec. Mr. Ashton?
That doesn't make much sense.
We need Quebec to
the Green Party is not a very significant player in federal politics in Quebec.
I have to speak better French to better connect with Quebecers. We must win, not only here in Montreal. We have to speak out to the people in the regions and to workers everywhere in Quebec. We have to work with the unions.
Moi, je crois que aussi il y a un élément historique du pacifisme au Québec et avec Mark Carney, avec tout son budget militariste, il y a une opportunité de vraiment critiquer le fait que le Bloc québécois n'est pas en train être contre cette politique militariste de Mark Carney. Je pense qu'il y a des opportunités au Québec de gagner des votes sur ce point-là.
NDP has to lead workers to victory. Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Now we'll move on to the open debate.
Was that a call for workplace democracy and workers' control of firms? I think that's something that we need to have as part of the discussion.
You individually, why are you the person that will let the NDP in Quebec win? What are you proposing, Ms. McPherson? Well, for instance, for me, the pathway for the NDP The pathway to success comes through Quebec. This is very important. We have to keep support. Remember remember Jack Layton and the Orange Wave in 2011? That was largely thanks to Quebec. And I went to Quebec City last week because I want to meet militants there, activists and candidates in Quebec. And now, this is very important. Each candidate, each member of parliament visits every region. It's important for us to be present everywhere in Quebec. We have to get back to today's headlines. Quebecers want a climate change champion. They've already demonstrated. You have shown a good example of this here. Hundreds of thousands of persons went down into the street over the past year. Quebec.
Ça va être intéressant avec Stephen Guilbeault, le fait qu'il a démissionné, si ça cause des réverbérations politiques au Québec à propos du politique climatique de Carney. Ouais, je suis encore avec Avis sur ce point-là.
And become the climate leaders once again here in Quebec. This is very important. It's a fundamental issue. And our party has an advantage in this respect here.
So we need to have Ruth Ellen Russell.
Come to Quebec. We need an energy that can unite our rural ridings. So often we hear from our rural ridings, our rural candidates, that they feel like they were left in the dust, that the strategy didn't complement them, that even the materials that they were receiving just didn't really align with the types of language that they need to use in their community to resonate with their people. And we need to leverage that. We need to leverage the expertise and the energy and the dedication and just honor that in our candidates in rural ridings, so that we can deliver a message that resonates, so that we can work together, we can reroute our values, and we can win in rural ridings. But we need to listen to them. We need to hear their message, and we need to embed that in our strategy and carry it forward together.
When I was in the Maritimes, I heard that point made out, and the notion that Ottawa gets to decide what candidates can represent different ridings in the Maritimes and other sort of rural communities is something that's a big obstacle to gaining traction.
Because the language of the working class rises above any language in the world. And that's what we're going to be speaking to people in Quebec, to Quebecers. We're going to be working hard to fight for the working class in this province. But people go, what's the working class? The working class is everybody that does not own the means of production. And so we'll be looking to fight for people that are on disability, people that are on old age security. And these fights, they go above and beyond languages. But as I say that, I know that from now on, I'll be trying to squeak in a sentence or two in public debates or public discussions after this debate in français.
Merci, Monsieur Ashton. Monsieur McQuill.
I think that's the first time I've heard a potential NDP leader talking about the ownership of the means of production.
That was good. That was very good. That I would get on the bingo card. You could give him capitalism maybe for that. Checked out.
Green initiative that has to be done before an election. And we want to present a candidate. We want to have a candidate in the different ridings.
Multicultural, multilingual country is both a great challenge and a great opportunity of diversity. But the thing that I can bring to this, when you asked what can you bring, in the 1980s, our provincial party was organizing what they called pack rat drives, where they went in and did urban stuff, trying to get pre-authorized checking donations, monthly donations. They weren't interested in our little rural ridings, but we organized field mice campaigns with the few activists from several different ridings getting together and going out where polls had 10% support and saying, okay, can we find that 1 in 10 family and phone through the phone book and find the people and bring them in as members? And that's what we're going to have to do. Okay. But I also think we have to be realistic that at the moment, 55 of our ridings in Quebec have the same president. friends, we have an awful lot of work to do.
Écoutez, mes gars.
So listen, guys, we need to talk. If we want to come back in Quebec, we need to speak to Quebecers in their language. Right now, we're not up to the job to come back in strength. We need to develop a clear offer in French focused on Quebecers' needs. It will take some time, but it is necessary and essential. We need to do it, we have to do it, and we will do it.
Ça veut dire c'est Harvey qui est en train de critiquer les autres candidats pour le français.
The party has to go through our riding associations. That's true. And it is necessary for each candidate to identify very early, to find candidates to identify early, to support the riding associations, to raise funds, to prepare ourselves for a good campaign. It's very important to work on that in Quebec.
What Avi, you're saying around the language barrier, I do believe we can absolutely rise above that, and part of that work of connecting with your local champions, the folks that live and breathe in community all day long, is just that. I don't believe that a language barrier should prevent us from being great. I think we can work across that. I think we can bridge that. I think everybody up here, I like to believe, that is dedicated to learning the French language. On a personal note, my adult life has been spent trying to hone my native language of Likola. We only have about maybe 6 to 10 fluent language speakers that speak Likola in my community of all our Likola speakers. So I really feel the commitment deep to language. As Quebec do, as Francophone folks do, and I really hope that we can bridge that gap. I am truly deeply committed
There's
to
such a great irony here. They're complaining about the need to appeal to French Quebecers, but they exclude the most Francophone candidate from participating.
pense toujours au Québec à notre ami Jack Layton. Je n'ai pas la moustache.
So when I think about Jack Layton, I don't have a mustache or like
line.
my friend Rob, but I know that Quebecers are thirsty and hungry for a solution. And perhaps one day with a mustache, we also need to do a lot of work. Thank you very much, everyone.
You know, when Jack was first elected leader, they actually did a focus group on whether or not he should shave off the mustache.
Fair questions.
And they said, yes, he looked like a cop. And he said, too bad I'm not shaving it off.
I'm going to go from my left to my right.
How do they feel about
what
goatees?
What is something that might surprise us about you, Mr. Ashton?
About me? I love classical music. That's how I do my work when I'm in the office.
Adam Johnston, same question. What could surprise us about you?
If you weren't paying attention super closely to the last election, I want to give a shout out to our team. We actually did very, very, very well, all things considering the result. We had over 26,000 people vote NDP, vote for me in North Island, Powell River, in a rural riding where it is very challenging to get to your ballot box. And it's something that I like to give thanks to every chance I get.
Mr. Lewis, something that could be surprising to us.
Well, I've never said this in public before, but I can sing every word of every song in the musical The Pajama Game because it's about labor rights. But I actually have an allergy to musicals, and when they come on or someone starts singing them, I laugh hysterically until I cry. And so it's become a party game for people to put musicals on so they can watch me lose it.
All right, something surprising about you, Ms. McPherson.
Well, something surprising about me, I guess one of my very favorite things to do is bake. I'm a big baker, and I like to make protest cookies. It's one of my very favorite things. I've made anti-scab cookies. I've made cookies that are against bills that we don't like. I've made cookies for members of this government who are attacking the Rocky Mountains, trying to open up coal mining. So, you know, protest cookies is a thing. Hit them with the sweetness.
Did you bring any for us?
Absolutely. They're in the back.
Mr. McQuill, something surprising about you.
Well, I'm a holistic management certified educator, and it was one of the early triple bottom lines: look after the land, look after the people, look after your income. And After we first took the course, we bought a horse-powered snow scoop, and we clean our lane on the snow belt of Huron County with a team of horses and a snow scoop.
Très bien. Merci beaucoup pour ces réponses. Intéressant.
Thank you very much for these answers. And now the second question. Apart from the city where you live, what is your favorite city?
Favorite city?
Okay. Miss McPherson.
Well, come on. Le Montréal. C'est nécessaire.
It's necessary in Montreal. And it's a very beautiful city. And I love the city of Montreal, really. All right. So we're trying to speak to Montrealers, Toronto, Vancouver, and Quebec City, all three. Ms. Johnston, what is your favorite city, apart from your community?
City, because it's too small, but the true west coast of Vancouver Island is Tofino, and it's beautiful.
Très bien. Monsieur Ashton, votre ville préférée?
It's going to be Montreal.
Mr. Ashton, your favorite town?
Because of the strong débardeurs and the checkers in this community who fight for the rights of workers.
C'est vrai que les débardeurs...
It's true that the longshoremen and dock workers are very well known for their enthusiasm. Now let's speak to workers. About workers, we're going to speak about the role of workers and the labor movement in general. So during the NDP played a significant role for workers, and under the previous government, the NDP secured significant gains for workers, including the adoption of a federal anti-scab legislation, the introduction of a 2-week paid sick leave for workers in federally regulated sectors. But despite this, and despite the history of the labor movement with the NDP, during the last election, many other parties approached workers and unions and convinced them to vote for them rather than to vote for the NDP. So what will you do to win back these voters? Ms. McPherson. Well, I'm very proud of the anti-scab legislation of the NDP. And once again, the credit goes to Mr. Boulris. And also, workers built this party, and they must remain at the heart of this party. The NDP has always been their answer, and the NDP must continue to help workers. It's our responsibility. I am proud of the party's history that defend the rights of partners and protect each job. Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Mr. McQuail, the role of unions.
We need to do more than defend workers. We need to mobilize them to take power.
And we speak for the 99%. Some people are unionized, others are not. We need our work should compensate people.
All people.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Il faut limiter l'intelligence artificielle.
And limit AI because of its impact on employment and workers. We need to draw a red line in terms of AI because the matrix organization and AI. Thank you, Mr. Ashton. You're the head of a labor movement. How should we bring back workers within the NDP? We must go back to our roots. This means listening to workers. They have a word to say, and all Canada can win better salary, better economy, more stable economy, and I will fight to provide access to unions, protect the right to vote, create well-paying and good jobs. The NDP wants to create a more just country.
We should
So
also
is
talk
there
about
a
workplace
way
democracy.
to
There's
bring
countries,
back
even
workers
Germany,
to the NDP?
others that have works councils.
Well, before we were
It's
an
not
alliance
even under
between
capitalism, you
workers,
can
farmers,
have some direct say in decision-making of the
worked
firm.
together during the fascist trend. But the working class has changed a lot. Today, they do work for hire. We find them in our boutiques, our call centers. The unions are at the heart of our party. These workers are the majority in Canada, and they're crushed by the cost of living. And so they're the ones who can benefit the most from our solutions. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Johnston.
Has raising the minimum wage been mentioned at all?
Unions in Quebec
so.
and in Canada. We must listen to them. We need more unions in every sector. And we must improve the lives of workers everywhere. Thank you. We're now going to move on to the open section on the role of unions for the NDP and the way to bring back these voters. When we think about the last elector, the Conservative Party received a lot of support from unions. How come the Conservatives' message is going through but not that of the NDP? Who would like to start? Ms. McPherson. It's an essential question because when we speak to workers, it's important for us to speak to them about the important topics, the cost of life, jobs, to protect jobs, and also to talk about housing for each worker in this country. The housing crisis is so important. The cost of living crisis is significant. So it's important for us to speak simply, clearly, and with discipline. Mr. Ashton and Mr.
That was kind of an
McWhale.
interesting point. She's saying that the NDP has been undisciplined in its...
A leader that actually comes from the working class, that has led workers for a generation. That person is me. Because we need to defend against somebody like Pierre Poilievre, who cosplays as a worker, who doesn't even own a pair of work boots like the pair I'm wearing tonight. A Liberal government that does nothing but hurt workers by sending them back to work, and they actually intentionally fight for employers. We need to get back to our rural roots, as MP Gorjan does. We have to fight like heck to get rid of Section 107, as per Leah Gazan. And like our friend MP McPherson had just said, MP Bellarice helped bring in anti-scab legislation. We must get back to a party. We must stand up for the workers in this country, both unionized and non-union. People that can't go to work for whatever reason, this party must get back to its roots and fight like hell for every worker in this country and defend against the ruling class that wish to rip us apart and divide us. I'll stop there and share the time.
All right, Mr. McWhale, then Ms. Johnston and Mr.
Rob
Lewis.
definitely shines in that.
The unions and their members don't.
Dear friends, some people don't believe that we are going to win.
Behave strategically, and that is what has happened. And that is what will continue to happen as long as we play by the rules of the first past the post system. It's kept the elites in power since before Confederation, and certainly after working men and women got the vote after the First World War. It's kept the United Farmers, the Independent Labor, the CCF, and now the NDP and the Green Party from getting their fair share of representation. And over time, as that keeps happening, the people who should be supporting us and who would like to see what we're talking about vote for other parties, they hold their nose, and each time they do that, they make the spread between the NDP and the Liberals or the Conservatives 2 votes instead of 1, because they take 1 away from us and give it to somebody else, or they just stop voting. And that is a reality that if we don't deal with it, none of what you're hearing today is going to get very far. and if we don't deal with that reality. So I'd like to hear from the other candidates where they stand on putting forward a strong plan or system for dealing with first past the post so it doesn't keep defeating us, and where they would stand if they were in a minority position or a government position in bringing in proportional representation.
Merci, Monsieur McQuill.
The NDP should definitely use its leverage and minority to push for proportional representation. But we should also talk about the fact that the party itself
representation has to get into our government.
Lack of democracy.
Our workers, we need to show back up for workers. I don't feel we were present enough. I don't think we've invested enough in that relationship. We need to listen and then act. We need to protect our workers in every way we can. We should be championing card checking as a way to hopefully bring forward stronger unions, more unions. We should be looking at ways to keep our workers safe through things like supporting a nurse-to-patient ratio across the country, something that BC is implementing right now, but something that nationwide we should not have nurses that are overworked and pushed into very dangerous situations, all while they're just trying to care for Canadians across the country. So absolutely, we need to show up, we need to listen, and then we need to act.
To Neil's comment on nurses to workload, it brings up the notion of militarism, and militarism is very capital intensive versus labor intensive. Let's invest in daycare, education, provides many more jobs than investing in the war machine.
But in particular, electric buses.
The feeling was so strong on the floor. I was there with the Unifor rep, Mike, who took me around, and here's what they were doing. They were taking Canadian steel in one side of the factory. They were making it into bus parts. So it's much harder for the business to flee if it's ever bought by a foreign owner, because they make the parts and then on the other side of the factory, they assemble the buses. They have batteries from Quebec. They're putting those buses out to municipalities across the land. This is using Canadian materials. It's a tariff-proof business. It's hiring local workers. They have $13.5 billion worth of orders waiting. And on the topic of public ownership and the federal government's role, there's a piece of federal land across the street that would be ideal for an expansion of the factory. But the feeling on the floor was so strong, those workers so proud of actually being part of something bigger than ourselves, way more than all that elbows up stuff. I felt that I saw Canadian workers building the future, and with public ownership, we can solve all those problems and slash our emissions at the same time.
Merci, Monsieur Lewis. Il nous reste un peu moins de 2 minutes. Là, Madame McPherson et Monsieur Ashton pour conclure.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Et je voudrais parler et mon...
I'd like to discuss my bill. This is a bill that aims at canceling the CLAC, CLAC. This is a corporate-based union. It's a bad union for all workers everywhere in the country, and it's an important step. It's important to counter this, to protect workers' rights in this country.
Senator, my union, I've seen far too many workers killed on the job, and I've seen far too many workers injured on the job. The United Steelworkers pushed for a bill called the Westray Law, which prosecuted employers when they killed their workers. It's been what? One company that's actually had somebody go to jail, maybe two. These employers, they know the labor code is written to work for them. The labor code is not written for laborers, for workers. So we have to fix the labor code so that workers can go to work and actually feel comfortable that they're going to come home alive. That's what we have to do as this party. If we want workers to come and join our party, to stand with us shoulder to change this country, then we must be ready to fight like heck to help them, to make sure that they have a safe working environment. Because right now, the way the laws are written, it's like going to a casino.
C'est tout le temps qu'on avait pour cette section.
That's all the time we had for this section. Thank you very much. Now let's move on to the fifth section, which is the NDP's path forward.
But they've never done so at the federal level. It's never happened. there's a debate in the party about why this hasn't happened. This is your chance to address this. But let me ask you this. Have you learned any lessons from our provincial wings, from the provincial wings of the party that have formed government? Or do you believe that paying the conscience of Parliament is good enough? I'm going to start with Mr. McQuail.
I got involved in 1980 because I wanted to change the way we treated each other and the way we treated the planet. I didn't get involved in politics to become a politician. I wanted to change what we did as a society. And I've been watching for 45 years, and I don't think we're making very good progress, either as a society or as a political party. Which is why what I'm saying is we have to figure out how to beat first past the post. And we also have to do what we've done in the past, which is build at the local riding level, figure out how to make membership work the best way a riding can raise money by figuring out a fair way of sharing money between the federal party, the provincial wings, and the local riding associations. And we've got to educate and communicate.
Thank you, Mr. McQuail. Mr. Ashton, party of power or conscience of Parliament?
Party of power, baby. We got to bring back this party to its roots. We got to be a voice for the working class, a voice for everyday working Canadians. We got to win back the voters that we lost, the working class wannabes, and show all voters that we can win. We got to go from the shop floor to the union hall. We got to earn people's trust back through our actions, not by what we're saying. We got to stop talking at people, but with people. We're going to build this party up by listening, organizing, and standing together. We're going to be a bottom-up movement, and we're going to be representing the voices of the people. We're not going to be speaking for them, we're going to be speaking with them.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Madame Johnston.
It's not good enough to not be a majority. We haven't seen the progress in our country because we haven't had enough leverage to make the changes in Canada that we need to have an inclusive Canada. Something that was inspirational that was happening in another province is actually the student movement that is completely left out of all of this. There is a phenomenal relationship, especially between the U of T NDP club and their provincial counterparts in the NDP. They do phenomenal work together. The students come out in 30 and 40 folks to come and help door knock in provincial elections. We're not seeing that turnout federally. That relationship is not there, and that has to change. We have to leverage our students that are active and passionate and want to do this work with us.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Carl, I'll address your false dichotomy in debate. The path forward for the NDP is to stay laser focused on the everyday emergency of just trying to get by. Wealth taxes and public options are popular ideas. They're solutions for the 99%. Ideas like this won't just win us back voters, they'll bring in people who don't vote at all. We win by offering hope in hard times. Inside the party, we need to put members back in the driver's seat. These big solutions can only be won by big organizing. Riding associations should be 343 organizing hubs across the country. We show up for community struggles every single day, so communities show up for us at election time. This is how our comeback begins.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. McPherson.
Listen, we are stronger when we work together. We are stronger when we are united across the country and when we work with the provincial parties. I think that's very, very important. You know, we also need to take steps to support riding associations across this country so that they can nominate candidates sooner, so that they can raise the funds that they need to raise to run a strong campaign. You know, we've done that in my riding. We've done that in Alberta, and I know how to win. I know how to beat Conservatives, and I am excited, and I am willing, and I am eager to take the lessons that I have learned winning the strongest seat in the NDP and use those lessons across the country.
Thank you. We will now open the debate to all of you. You all come from a province that has had a government.
So we are
had an NDP government.
An hour and 10 minutes in, and they haven't mentioned militarism,
you've learned
and they haven't mentioned
your provincial
world
NDP government. Mr.
or
McQuail
even
wants to start.
Really,
if you win government, don't go home and leave the work to the people you elected. Get out in the street the next day and demand more so that the right can't shift the discussion away from the goals of the NDP. That's what I learned in Ontario in 1990. But I also learned that if you work with people as you develop policies and programs, because I was the executive assistant to the Minister of Agriculture, and we developed an environmental farm plan with the farm community, and also the farm business registration plan, which actually moves money to farm organizations so they can bring forward policy and have
Tony,
good
we only
debate.
got 8 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah, but you've got 7 more, and there are only 4 more of you. Be patient, Abby. I got to speak in English. You got French to work with. So let me make my point. If you work with the people that you're bringing forward ideas for, they last, because those 2 programs that the NDP brought in back in 1990 are still there after successive Liberal and Conservative governments. We've got to work with people. We've got to work from the ground up. And if you're a government, don't get too high and mighty, and at least bring in proportional representation for your province.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
This
over to you.
dichotomy of electability versus big, bold ideas, it's a false one. Big, bold ideas that actually are big enough to solve the epic crises we face are how we win. They're how we've always won. When Tommy Douglas brought in Medicare, it was not popular. He had to go to war with doctors. Everybody told him it's impractical, it's too big. And now we have changed the life of generations of Canadians in our daily lives, in our skin, and people will never forget the contribution we made. Look at Rob Canoe. You're asking about provincial premiers. Ran an election where he promised to search the landfill. It was not a popular idea at the time. It's a time for moral clarity and straight talk. And Wob ran on that. The Conservatives ran a disgusting racist campaign, advertising campaign against him. He won the election. He searched the landfill. He brought justice to those families. That's the NDP tradition we need. Solutions as big as the crises we face, and the courage to speak straight and honest about them.
Okay, I've got Ms. McPherson.
Tommy
then Mr.
Douglas
Ashton.
bringing Medicare was on the 4th term. It was only because the socialists were pushing hard and the community clinics were pushing hard for Medicare.
We get help for Canadians. And for me, I think about Rachel Notley. I think about what she did in Alberta, where she was able to cut child poverty in half, where she was able to take such important steps. And you know, I have to say, when Rachel Notley stood with me and endorsed me at my launch, I was extraordinarily proud, because rebuilding the relationship between the federal NDP and the provincial NDP was a goal of mine from the time I was elected in 2019. You know, when we win, when New Democrats get elected, we make life better for Canadians, and that is so important. That's why we're running. That's why it's so important that we win.
Mr. Ashton, then Ms. Johnston, and then Mr. McQuill wants to come back.
What I've learned from NDP governments in this country, or even NDP governments in waiting in this country, is we have to fight against the language of hate. Because if you look at the right wing of this country and the right wing of the United States, and I mean the far right wing, is they tell us that we have to hate our neighbor. They tell us if you're angry and your life is tough and you're not getting by, it's because of your neighbor. That's so not right, and it's so not true. You see, if you look at what Jack did, he led with hope, love, justice, and he lifted our party up. And unfortunately, his life was cut too short, or we would have formed government in this country. And if you look what they're doing in Manitoba and BC, what they did in Alberta, when the NDP takes power, they show people that it's okay to love each other, that it's okay to give somebody a hand up. That's what we have to do with workers today, is we have to show them a path forward, one that isn't filled with hate and bigotry and misogyny, a path forward but helping your neighbor and not holding them down.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Ms. Johnston.
Bravo.
Yeah, having an NDP government means that we get to push back when there's a racist items being tabled in the House of Commons, in Parliament. We just went through a horrific situation in BC where we had a party table legislation that looked to ban the use of any 2S LGBTQIA flag being flown, and it was disgusting. I am so proud that our NDP government made sure that that bill did not pass. We're not going to see that enacted. It's not going to go any further. And I'm proud that we have a leader that is going full on against the pipeline threat that appears to be coming strong and hard from Alberta and from the Liberal Party, from Mark Carney. But we must always, always, always stay connected to the grassroots. You are our party. The people are the party. We are just conduits to bring our message forward. The people need to feel and hear themselves in this party because they are what's driving us forward.
Thank you. Mr. McWill, you want to add something?
Yes. That issue of staying connected to our roots and the communities. And one of the things that gives me hope at a time when I can feel very despairing is what I know about the people who are working in their communities on things that relate to the environment or to energy. And I think we have to be sure that we are talking strongly to them about how they can help build a future they want for their children and their grandchildren. That's part of why I'm here. But I think as part of that, we need to be brave enough to challenge the capitalist, corporate, consumerist ideology that I've watched for 45 years take us down a path of growth. Growth that makes the rich richer, makes the earth poorer, and makes communities have less and less that they can work on and share. So we have to also talk about degrowth, degrowing a cancerous economic theory and system, and figuring out how we can do a better job of sharing and caring for each other by doing less materially, both energy and resources.
Carl, we haven't talked enough about what happened today. We're talking about the path back for the party. This is a moment where only the NDP would say things about this deal that Carney has signed with Danielle Smith, throwing out all the climate legislation, the meager progress the Liberals had made. This is the sellout of the century. And as people look into this deal, they're going to see that the pipeline might just be a distraction. I do have a message for you in Ottawa, Prime Minister Carney. This pipeline will not be built, not in BC, not here in Quebec, not anywhere. It is not going to happen. But more than that, this sellout of the century is about AI. It's about massive, dirty electricity to power AI. It's going to reconfigure the electricity system of the Western provinces to feed oil and gas instead of the power lines, not pipelines, that we need to get off oil and gas once and for all. Our path back as a federal party, and we will have to navigate with love and care relationships with the provincial sections. Our path back lies through climate leadership, climate clarity, the courage to tell the truth, and to say we have to get off all fossil fuels, including LNG, as soon as possible. We need to build those jobs first, though, because transition is the last word a worker hears before they get screwed. So on an urgency basis, on an emergency basis, we need to be building, under public ownership, clean jobs in renewable energy, in an electric bus revolution, so that those jobs are waiting for oil and gas workers, because workers can't transition to a promise or an idea. The jobs need to be waiting.
What's the plan to shut down the tar sands?
Epicenter of our economy, and
they won't even use the word tar sands.
Very well. Ça termine ce cinquième
and if it's this changes everything, and you're not willing to use the word tar sands, and you're not even willing, to say shut down the tar sands, does this really change everything?
So once again, we're going to start from the left to the right, and we'll come back for the other question. Rob Ashton, what was your first job?
I worked at a place
français, s'il vous plaît.
Oh, Jesus.
In French, please.
Moi, c'était le Spaghetti Factory à Vancouver.
In a liquidation area? Yes. Ms. Johnston, your first job. I worked at Dairy Queen. Well, wonderful, tasty. I sold cars in the street. Ms. McPherson, your first job.
Abby was a used car salesman?
I was a swimming instructor for children. Yes, swimming, thank you. Mr. McWhale, what was your first job? I worked for an arborist. Ah, interesting, interesting.
Question, Mr. McWhale, What
My
is
first job was a
the
dishwasher.
best advice you've ever received?
Busboy.
Well, in some ways, it was advice from a team of horses I was trying to work with, and that was that anger doesn't get you anywhere. Because if you get pissed off at horses, they just get nervous and unhappy, and things go really badly. So learning to work with horses helped me to learn work better with others and get a better control. Because I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, father, and he bottled anger, and then it came out. So, yeah, horses maybe taught me some of the best lessons in my life.
Ms. McPherson, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, I think about being a member of Parliament, and I think about Charlie Angus, and he used to sit right in front of me in the Parliament. And I remember him telling me one day that you can waste a lot of time writing a speech, or you can spend that time doing things that are more fun. So you got to be brave, you got to put yourself out there, you got to be willing to go for it. And I think about Charlie when I think about things like this debate this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, what is
So
the
she just
best
really
advice
wanted to
you've
mention
ever
her
received?
connection to
When
Charlie
I was in
Angus?
Argentina 20 years ago making my first documentary film, The Take, about workers taking over their factories and running them as democratic cooperatives, this is advice that they gave us that I want to share with the workers at the Carney plant in Ingersoll, where the company has gone back to the United States, and they've said if they go for the machines, they will occupy the plant. And I remember sleeping on the floor of factories defending the machines. So what the workers in Argentina say is occupy, resist, and produce. Best advice ever.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Madam Johnston, what is the best advice?
Ms. Johnston, what's the best advice?
Part of our culture where you don't receive a name until you're about 10 months old. And so the name that was given to me was La Colloqua, which loosely translates to speaks loud or voice is heard. And so I definitely feel like that is advice that was given to me very young in age, is to say the things. Because there's someone out there that maybe isn't going to say them and wants to hear them or needs you to say them. So I think that's something that I carry very near and dear. And then the other thing that kind of made me laugh when you asked that question is the immediate image that came into my brain was actually of Disney's Aladdin, which is a controversial movie. But the genie turns into a little bee and he whispers, "Be yourself." And that's something that I hear all the time, is to keep it genuine and be yourself.
Thank you. Mr. Ashton, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Be kind to people, because you just never know what's actually happening in their lives. So always try to be kind.
Thank you. I'm going to add a question of my own because we have a few minutes left before we go to the closing statement. Oui, vous allez souffrir encore un peu.
Okay. So you will suffer a little more.
Why do you...
I'll ask the question in English.
In 15 seconds or less. Mr. Ashton.
To provide better lives for people of this country, and to stop the lying and the quite frankly BS that comes out of Ottawa from every party but the NDP.
Madam Johnston.
I'm here to bring the NDP a big win in the next election. If we win big in the next election, and then we win even bigger after that, and we're staring Prime Minister in the face, and I'm still your person, let's do it. But I'm here to nation build. I'm here to bring a collective that's strong and fierce and is going to win victory in the next election so that NDP can take a meaningful step into that majority position.
Mr. Lewis, do you want to be Prime Minister of Canada?
We are posed at the brink of the most serious crises in human history. And in a country like Canada, awash in wealth, every single person deserves to live a dignified life with all of their needs met as we fight the rise of fascism, which is feeding on the soil of economic desperation. To be Prime Minister in this country and deliver those things would prevent unbelievable suffering that we're in for otherwise.
Ms. McPherson, why do you want to be Prime Minister of Canada?
I want to change the systems that are hurting Canadians. I want to change the systems that are making our country unjust, that are leading to greater inequality. And I think when New Democrats win, we change those systems. We make life better for Canadians. That's why I'm running to be the leader of the NDP.
Mr. McWhale, you're the last one. I'm asking the question. Why do you want to be Prime Minister of Canada?
Same reason I ran in 1980. I want to change how we treat each other, and I want to change how we treat the world. My 45 years of experience in politics and my over 50 years of experience as a farmer has told me that you can make change. One of the things I've worked on is developing a holistic goal for Canada that talks about the kind of things that we'd like in our quality of life and the kind of dreams we have for the future, based on my conversations with people that I've met and talked to and also worked with as a teacher. And we need a vision, we need a goal to bring people together, to bring our provincial and federal party together, to bring people to us. But we need that vision, and we need to be able to work on it.
Thank you.
This entire debate just happened, and it hasn't even been mentioned that there's a genocide happening on this planet. This is the greatest moral question facing humanity today, and it's not even mentioned in this debate.
They don't say anything about militarism and Carney's radical militarist turn.
And just the total absence on foreign policy in general, I think.
Our party, and who will lead us to victory. Today, we can build a solid party. Together, we can build, and thank you very much. We need to be solitary. Mr. Ashton, over to you. Thank you. You've heard that my French is not perfect, but 2 months from now, 2 months ago, I never would have thought I would be in a French-speaking debate. Quebec and French are important for me. I'm working hard. I want to bring the NDP back to its roots, a party that fights for workers. That is how we're going to win, not just in Montreal and in big cities. I think that I'm the right choice for this. Solidarity, my friends. Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Mr. McWhale, over to you. My friends, we have a lot of work to do. We need to rebuild the NDP party as a party for all. And we need to build a progressive coalition. We need to open our arms wide and welcome so many people, especially those who don't vote anymore, because they no longer believe in the political system. We also need to speak to liberals and the conservatives. My friends, if we work together, we'll be able to build a wonderful future, one that we can be proud of. Thank you, Mr. McWhale. Mr. Lewis, we can live in a society that is based on solidarity, where rentals are reasonable, the sky doesn't have any smoke, and transportation is financed. It works and it's free. That world is possible, but we need to create it together. And so that is why I am running to become the leader of the NDP, to put hope before fear, to offer solutions that are as great as the crises we're going through, to fight against a government that stops using money and starts serving people. Thank you and have a good evening. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. McPherson. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to everyone who listened to this debate. It's now time to act. I have the experience to rebuild this party and win. Yes, we must all continue to work on our French, because our pathway to true victory has to go through Quebec, through each French-speaking community, including my own. The NDP must become once again the party that takes a stand for family and helps Canadians. I know that we can do it, and I am ready to do it right now. Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Thanks to each and every one of you. Tennille Johnson, Rob Shaw. No, that's someone else.
This is actually
Ashton,
remarkable. This is a very this
Abby Lewis,
is akin
Heather
to
McPherson,
blocking
and Tony McWhale. Thank
participation
you so
in this
much for taking
race.
part in this
Perhaps they have
debate.
not a single
It wasn't
question
always easy,
that dealt with the genocide in
but I
Gaza, not a
think
single
that,
question that dealt with
you,
militarism, not a single
were
question that
able to
dealt with foreign
contribute
policy.
in
I don't think
each
one of the
in your own
candidates
way,
even
and this is a very
mentioned foreign
important
policy, any
exercise in
international.
democracy, and
This
I
is
thank
just
you for taking
such
part in this debate.
kind of
Thank
Western
you to everyone
chauvinist
who,
type
who were tuned in at home.
on behalf of the questioners, the
February
party who decided the
2026 in
questions,
the BC's Lower
but also
Mainland,
the candidates for
and
not even
the
raising
NDP
any of
leader
these issues.
will be
That's
announced
remarkable.
at the NDP
The
convention in March
NYC
in
mayoral
Winnipeg.
debate had more
Alors, je
foreign
remercie
policy
bien
than
sûr
this
toute
debate,
l'équipe
and that was a
technique et les
mayoral
techniciens.
I'd like
Seriously,
to thank all the
seriously,
technical
these are
team,
supposed to be
everyone
preparing to
who
be
took part in organizing
the leader
this
of
debate.
Canada,
Thank you for
that
being
is a
here.
G7
And,
country, that's part of
my name is
NATO, that's
Carl, and I say goodbye
part
and
of
see you next time.
G20, that's part of all these international alliances, and you literally don't ask a single question about international affairs. Honte au NPD, honte à tout le monde qui a décidé ces questions. C'est absolument inacceptable. Le fait qu'il y a tout un autre 8 milliards de personnes dans le monde, ça ne s'intéresse pas au NPD. Et le fait que le Canada, tu sais, la moitié du travail de Mark Carney, c'est d'aller un peu tout partout dans le monde. Il était juste à Abu Dhabi, il était à Washington. Est-ce qu'il y a même, il y a pas, même pas eu une question à propos de les relations avec les États-Unis? Je ne sais pas s'il y a même eu une question à propos des relations avec les États-Unis. Incroyable. Moi, je pense qu'ils vont au moins parler la génocide à Gaza, à Palestine un peu, et surtout le budget militaire. So in the bingo list, that I stated at the start, I saw that they mentioned capitalism was mentioned by Tony once. The Tennille talked about abolishing tuition. I don't believe the word colonialism was used. I don't believe the word abolish billionaires was used. You could infer that there was something about abolishing billionaires, but never stated in anything close to that. Tar sands, the words tar sands weren't used, though you could say that Avi suggested that we need to get off the tar sands by saying we need to shut down oil and gas eventually, but that's not that controversial position. Venezuela, of course, wasn't mentioned. Workplace democracy, land back. I never heard that. Haiti, salarying doctors out of NATO, turn the real estate investment trusts into co-ops, imperialism, expropriation. I don't believe was used. Though you could make a case that reference to the means of production that went a little bit in that direction. Patriarchy wasn't mentioned, though. Actually don't know if there was anything about sexism. There was a couple comments about sexism when I think maybe it was to Neil, bigotry and stuff. Socialism, I don't think was mentioned. Cutting military spending wasn't mentioned. Gaza Holocaust wasn't mentioned, and not Gaza genocide or anything. And worst of all, Justin Bieber wasn't mentioned. So it was an interesting debate. I don't know. People have other comments and on what we just listened to.
I mean, I think what's interesting is what's missing from it. And like we've said since the beginning of this campaign that like your ideas are needed in this campaign. But I'm kind of surprised that we just got through an entire debate. We have a government that's planning to more than double military spending, and that wasn't even mentioned in this debate. Like, that is the biggest issue we're facing. Every other issue that was discussed tonight could be paid for by canceling Mark Carney's military budget increase. You know, one time spending $24 billion would eliminate all student loan debt in this country. Okay, well, Carney's planning on increasing the military budget by $100 billion a year eventually. So, like, a drop in the bucket. Eliminating tuition, eliminating student loans is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. And somehow we're not even talking about that. I'm actually flabbergasted how right we were. That these ideas need to be in this race, and they won't be in this race without Yves.
Yeah, I fully echo all of that. And, there was nothing new in that debate either. We didn't hear any interesting policy drops. I mean, especially Avi, he really has a script, like word for word, that he goes through this entire thing. We didn't hear any specifics at all. And yeah, I mean, like, what about migrant justice? What about everything that's going on at the border? What about surveillance? What about the securitization? Like, how can we not talk? If you ask like Canadians, okay, like what's probably the biggest politics in the last year? We have the budget, of course, didn't get talked about at all. The military spending, of course, Palestine, NATO, Ukraine, nothing talked about there. The border, we're seeing everything that's happening with ICE in the States, and the exact same things are happening here. We're just like, what, the NDP is just not going to talk about it. I'm also like, when Ashton said at the end, he was like, you know, lumping praise on the NDP, saying like, oh yeah, the NDP is the best party ever. Like, how can you look at the state of the NDP right now and heap praise on it? Like, the NDP needs so much reform. Yeah, it's just tone deaf to me.
I mean, they mentioned some discussion on climate change, but they admitted the fact that Canada's military is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. That was not even talked about. The need to reduce, cut back Canada's military budget. When I was a student, a master's student at the Monk School, I invited Heather McPherson. I organized a panel discussion. I invited Heather McPherson. I invited he was the Minister of Immigration under Stephen Harper, Christopher
Alexander.
Yes, Christopher Alexander. I invited him, and the topic of the panel discussion was to bring attention to terminating the Canada-U.S. Safe Third Country Agreement, And so Heather McPherson was very vocal about that during the panel discussion, saying that the United States under the Trump administration, this was in 2020, under the Trump administration was flagrantly violating international refugee law, its own laws. And so to hear no discussion really on Trump, as you mentioned, Jasmine, on the horrendous treatment of asylum seekers, I think is just deplorable. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, in terms of foreign policy, just a complete evasion of the whole issue. There was more foreign policy discussion in Zoran Mamdani's New York City mayoral debate than this. So just disappointing all around in that regard. And the fact that one of the biggest issues now is this deal that Donald Trump is putting forward to settle the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And there was no discussion about that at all. A few days ago, Avi Lewis put on his Facebook page that the deal is just going to benefit the wealthy, the most corrupt. That Trump's deal is just going to benefit the most corrupt. But also you have to look at the fact that the only solution is a diplomatic solution. Heather McPherson last year in November in Parliament was successful in getting a unanimous motion passed urging for Ukraine to be admitted as a member of NATO. I mean, this is suicidal policies, so these are some of the most alarming issues that is facing the world right now. And for the NDP to be totally evade it is really saying something about its lack of internationalism.
I mean, I don't want to take on the mantle of the G7, considering I'm very ambivalent towards the G7, but Canada is a G7 nation. I mean, the notion that Canadian foreign policy is irrelevant is a terribly backwards kind of position. And that is what the NDP question deciders made abundantly clear. And this is This is a pretty, it's also, I think it's important, people talked about the party going to grassroots and being more part of activism and stuff. There is no uprising against Canadian foreign policy ever more significant in the past 2+ years of protests, weekly base here in Montreal. Every week there's demonstrations, huge demonstrations. So if you want to be connected in with the grassroots and with activists, you have to be talking about Palestine, and this is kind of reflective of the fact the NDP's got a lot better in its rhetoric on Palestine over the past two years because of the activism. But there's been almost no presence of NDP MPs at the demonstrations. And so, if you want those forces to be part of the party and to see voting for the party matter and all this kind of stuff, I mean, at minimum, you have to have like one question at a debate that deals with this. But clearly, that is not something that the backroom decision makers want to have happen. Does anybody else have any final concluding comments?
I mean, I'm still just kind of shocked that there was absolutely no mention of the international situation, which is actually kind of the big elephant in the room that's determining everything right now. Like, we have a government that's planning on doubling military spending, and that wasn't even mentioned. So this is an amount of money, $100 billion a year. This is enough money to give like everything the NDP has ever asked for. Like everything that like the farthest left people in the NDP have ever asked for in this country. Every social program you could think of could be paid for with this money. And it wasn't even mentioned. Like not even mentioned. And my entire life in politics, I've been hearing people saying, "Oh, that sounds good, but how are you going to pay for it?" Well, they've just given us the answer. We know how we're going to pay for it. The money's there. They're planning on spending it on tanks and jets and bombs. Well, we can cancel that spending it and spend it on healthcare and education and working class people. Like this is so obvious that I'm just dumbfounded that it wasn't brought up.
The webinar that we did, Internationalism Belongs in the NDP Leadership Race, is looking pretty cutting edge. I mean, that was a week ago. We wouldn't have who would have imagined that we were going to get zero?
I don't even think the word Trump was mentioned once. Was it? Unless I missed it.
Avi alluded to it with some of his comments about fascism, but not I don't think direct. I don't think there was anything even how did that happen?
Yeah.
Wow. But there were questions about like I don't know, what were there, some of those wisdom, first job and stuff like that. I guess those are more important than
I mean, Tennille came out in favor of free education. Like that's something positive that happened in the debate. I mean, so far everything positive that's happened in this leadership race is when like a different candidate steals Yves' platform points. Like Heather calls for a housing emergency, Rob calls for a universal jobs plan, Tennille calls for free education. Like these are all points that you've already articulated and put out there. So I mean, I guess it's good to see that we're having an effect, and I would hate to see what they would be saying if we weren't here.
I wonder if it's like a strategic issue on the part of these candidates. If foreign policy was ever going to be a central issue in an upcoming debate, whether they're going to evade touching the Russia-Ukraine issue, given the large Ukrainian diaspora in Canada. I think we're the largest outside of Europe, right?
Well, I think there's no doubt that, I mean, there was just one of the Ukrainian associations put a questionnaire to different candidates, and it was published yesterday, a couple of days ago. So that's definitely an issue that would have been, the people would have tried to avoid taking a sort of what I would call a serious look at the issue, which is that it's complicated, and obviously Russia's invasion is brutal, but Canada helped provoke the war, and you can go back and we can get into the detail on that. But the simpler issue that Mike has mentioned about which is reframing the militarism from working class Canadian perspective, not even leaving aside the what happens if you give a bunch more resources to the people in Ottawa that have been backing this live stream genocide. If you give a bunch more military resources to these people, we know what's going to happen with them. They're going to, if it's whether it's Carney or Annan or Polyev, they're going to use them against Libya. They're going to use them against Venezuela. They're going to use them against Afghanistan. And as we know the history of the Canadian military, but just framing it that question from a Canadian working class perspective, the fact that just doesn't even get into the discussion is quite remarkable. I mean, I would have thought that even if it wasn't asked, that some of the candidates would have wanted to weave that in as part of their sort of legitimation of the social program. If it's viewed as a very who's going to pay for it, as Mike pointed out, kind of social program, you can weave in, well, Carney is saying we have this money, maybe we won't do the Golden Dome. They didn't even talk about things like Golden Dome, which I think have pretty wide, we're not going to put tens of billions of dollars into Trump's, wild militarization of space. We're not going to put tons of money into the surface combatants. We're not going to put tons of money into the F-35s. Some of these issues aren't even that kind of controversial. It shouldn't be that controversial in kind of NDP circles, but there's clearly no appetite for that discussion, obviously from the party, from the candidates.
But I think there's a big appetite for that from the base and from the membership. And I think that, members deserve to hear and decide on these positions and not have them filtered out before this debate, before it even starts. I think there's only, two official debates. I don't know if there's 2 or 3, but to keep off the stage the only candidate that's really truly centered on Gaza, anti-militarism, radical foreign policy is it's just unfair. It's unfair to members. It's unfair to the people who are on the receiving end of Canadian policy abroad. And I think a leadership race, a debate specifically in this case, that can't handle disagreement, dissent, different ideas on war, on genocide, on militarism, and even on how to tackle the climate crisis more head on, is just failing the moment that we're living in.
Yeah, and I think we heard a lot about workers and worker power, but we didn't actually get any concrete, what are we going to do, or what the problem is. And that's why it's so crazy that we didn't even hear anything about the US when, we look at the auto industry in Ontario, Stellantis pulling out these huge subsidies given to Stellantis and Volkswagen. We look at the Chinese EV 100% tariff, then China retaliates and stops buying the canola oil, screwing over farmers in the central Canada. So it's these are the workers' problems, but they're not even going to talk about it because they can't talk about any foreign policy, apparently. So they can't even talk with any substance about workers. It's nice to hear the workers' rhetoric, but I want to know a little bit more about what they're actually going to do and what this means.
Yeah, it's not coherent if you don't bring in the full picture.
And you go, Yves.
Well, I just the basic point that driving down wages is tied to corporate globalization and corporations moving their operations and being further empowered by NAFTA and similar type WTO and similar type accords is pretty self-evidently important from the standpoint of the Canadian working class. Driving down the unionization rate being down at the lowest rate since World War II, 15.5% in the private sector, is obviously intimately connected to Canada's position in pushing global capitalism and neoliberal trade agreements and accords. So you can't divorce these issues very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
I I think that debate was a very good example of what this leadership race would look like without Yves Engler in it. And that seems to be that we miss all of the most important points facing society today.
Yeah, we missed them. And then also, like, I was at the Cinco set last night in Montreal, and Rob Ashton said at one point, like, he was talking about Pierre Poilievre, and like, he was saying, oh, us up here, like, our policies, like, we're actually not that different from each other. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. Like, you guys you're all in the same vein. Like, the only one that actually is proposing concrete ideas that are different, that are like socialist, is Yves, and he's excluded from the race. And that's why,
And when you do that, carving out like the actual political differences from the race, you turn it into like pageantry about who can be the best retail politician to carry things forward, which is not at all what a leadership race should be about. Like we should be talking about what are the ideas that will win. What are the ways to carry this party forward? What are the ways to empower working class people? Not just to like pejoratively defend their rights, but to actually take power for workers to run this country. Like, and that seems to be just absent from the debate. Like, I'll say like Rob, threw some stuff in there about working class power, and like he's somebody that I respect. I've walked picket lines with him more times than I can count. He's a working class fighter. But we need really like I'm kind of amazed at just all of the issues that were left off the table and weren't even discussed, especially the militarism one, when like $100 billion a year, like this literally pays for everything. Every social program the NDP has ever proposed can be paid for this. And how has it been left off the table?
Yeah.
How are we just letting Carney throw $100 billion a year into the military, more than doubling our military spending? Then they have nothing to say about it.
I mean, I feel like what's lacking there is courage. It's honesty, but it's also courage. It's courage to name the apparently unnameable but very real problems so that we can actually solve them, right? Because if we don't say these things, whether it's NATO sanctions, tar sands, corporate power, Gaza, militarism, and on and on and on, if we don't address capitalism head on, then we're pretending to solve problems while leaving the causes intact. And so we can't solve them. We can say words that sound nice, but if we're not naming the cause, we can't find a path forward. So I think that for me, that was what was missing from tonight's debate.
I would say that this is a bad electoral strategy. I'm not always convinced that not taking on the foreign policy issues is a bad electoral strategy. To not talk about the military spending is unequivocally a bad electoral strategy. I say that with high levels of confidence. This is going in such a radical turn that the impact, and to be out in front rather than running behind. The NDP did that on the F-35 very clearly. Once Mark Carney finally said, oh, we're going to pause the rest of the F-35, then Jagmeet Singh came out. I'd actually asked Jagmeet Singh that question like a week or 2 weeks before, and he didn't want to say, oh, no, we should pause the F-35 in the context of Trump. And then Carney did it, and well, actually Blanchet asked Yves-François Blanchet that question, and then Blanchet came out saying it, and then 48 hours, 72 hours later, Carney came out, and then the NDP came out just after that. So they're so scared on military questions and on foreign policy questions, but particularly military questions, that I just think that you can frame that not just from an international standpoint, you can frame that from a Canadian working class standpoint, that they are not taking advantage of some very clear points of differentiation with the Liberals, and very clear points of I think, promoting peace and having an alternative.
And in the fact that the debate took place in Montreal, which has a very activist culture, environment, community. In Montreal, there were so many people that were opposing when there was talk about Canada publicly joining the coalition of the willing. There was so much protest and so much activism and resistance. So, I mean, to not talk about foreign policy in such a city, I think it's just baffling.
Yeah, there's clearly a much greater pacifist tradition. Of course, people were killed during World War I in Quebec City opposing conscription, and there's a history there. There was opposition to World War II. Significant. The mayor of Montreal went to jail. Was jailed because of also the pacifist World War II. So there's a long history. Is it as strong as it was in 2003? It's not. Like a Chèque à la guerre, they got hundreds of thousands on the street. That was even getting, Jean Charest to come out against the invasion of Iraq. It's not as strong, but there is a much greater historic current of anti-militarist kind of position. And I should say the Bloc Québécois is not raising these questions. The Bloc Québécois is very bad on Palestine compared to where public opinion in Quebec is on Palestine. So there's some room for traction in Quebec on those issues.
And they kept raising the issue of how we need to appeal to French Quebecers. We need to appeal to French Quebecers, and I can't say this enough. And it's like you exclude the most Francophonie candidate, and then you wonder why you're not appealing enough to French Quebecers. It's
Yeah, I mean, last night at the 5 à 7, I was like the only one there wearing a café, which is really surprising when you go out of Montreal. Everybody's like, it's the Palestine movement is so strong here, and the fact that there was just no representation at the NDP event, I just thought that was, I thought that was significant.
It's actually like shameful that they got through this debate without mentioning Palestine. Like, this is the greatest moral question facing humanity today. There's a genocide going on that we're all watching on our computers, that everyone knows is happening. I mean, this is supposed to be the party of moral clarity. Like, they just totally failed on the most important moral question of this century. I'm really disappointed, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there also could have been more on Indigenous rights on land back. We really didn't hear anything about that. I mean, there's the classic equating. The only time you talk about Indigenous is when you talk about the pipelines. But there was no other real strong discussion about them. Actually, no, Tennille did talk about building up infrastructure, so I'll take that back there. But we could have heard just so much more substance there. But Lucy, I'll let you go. I'm soaking it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a proper procedure. I just want to say a couple of words about this debate being in Montreal and the fact that, the whole shebang is about, but there's nobody speaking French. Yes, of course. And this is not something you plan for a month before. You plan and you pick and choose the people who are already speaking French and English. Those are the two official languages. And the only Indigenous person on the panel, you let her speak her own language and you have subtitles. This is a world of technology. I can't believe we couldn't have arranged for that. Then Avi, what's his face, saying, mais gars, I'm sorry? You just wiped out the whole the women's section of the debate. En disant, mes gars, my gars. I'm sorry, this is unacceptable. Not in 2025. I mean, Trudeau had problems in 2015. And he said, well, it's 2015, so I might as well adjust. Yeah, it's 2025. Where has been the NDP on this? Nowhere. In my writing here, I've been living here full time since 2012, and I voted NPD. I've never seen a candidate. Very often I showed up to the polling booth, and that's where I find out who was representing the NDP. I never heard anything from a local association or a regional association. And I mean, I'm not in some, godforsaken place. I mean, it is a little far from Montreal, about 70 kilometers. But I mean, why is everybody else able to organize and not in my writing? Right? It's just, and then they're standing there going, yeah, we have to win Quebec. Yes, you do, because you do not win an election without Quebec. But I'm sorry, but if your thing was to flirt with Quebec tonight, well, everybody's going to sleep alone. That's all I had to say.
Est-ce que vous pensez que ils ont décidé de faire ce débat en français en novembre, 4 mois avant la vote, parce que ils savaient qu'il va pas avoir les candidats qui ont la capacité de vraiment parler en français, puis mais ils ont besoin d'avoir au moins un débat en français et c'est mieux de le faire en avant que 4 mois avant, où il y a peu moins d'attention sur la course. Je sais pas. My question was basically, my question was basically like, did they do this French debate so far before the vote? Because they needed to get it out of the way. It was going to look
Probably.
bad. You need to get it out of the way early. I wondered that if
it felt like that for sure. It felt like that. I mean, they're taking lessons in French. I'm sorry, I teach French, and I have very hard students who do not work well, speak better than they do. I mean, it's ridiculous. They have access to plenty more resources than I can even afford my students, and still they can't articulate anything in French in a proper manner. I mean, Tony tried, and but I mean, the other ones, especially the people who come from money on that stage tonight, why weren't they? I mean, you want to become prime minister from a young age, so why don't start your damn lessons in French back then, when your brain is actually more malleable than it is when you show up at 50 and try to win the race. I mean, they've no idea. Nobody talked about laïcité, which is a big topic in Quebec right now. Immigration is tearing apart people in Quebec, and somebody needs to come in and say, okay, that's enough. And nobody did that. And tonight they didn't talk about that either. It is a shame that they did not address the genocide, but it is also a shame that they did not address how immigrants and refugees are treated in the country at the moment, and especially in Quebec. I don't know about the other provinces that much. And sorry, that's on me for not keeping up with the whole of Canada, but in Quebec, it's quite traumatizing at this moment. La CAQ, of all people, is going to rewrite the Constitution. Nobody talked about that. The effect that will have on Canada. I mean, they're just trying to win back their election in 2026, which hopefully they will lose, but they're on the way for that anyway. But I mean, those needs to be addressed, and nobody talked about that. And it was every time they winked at Quebec, it was so condescending. I mean, French is one thing, but there's like 1,000 other subjects that were not. And I agree with you. Palestine, hello. I mean, all my friends for sure are appalled by what's going on there and Canada's policies and all of that. And no, didn't talk about that. And what was that condescending remark from Ms. McPherson about the students and the, come on, you can't just subsidize people. You have to change the system that is making them in need of subsidies. And that's Yves. That's Yves. That's the guy who's going to do it. So people, we have to, comme on dit au Québec, il faut se retrousser les manches. And we have to get to work and get him to be heard from the party. I mean, I keep being rather unpleasant to the NDP emails that I get. I mean, I'm polite. My mother raised me well, but like I registered for the webinar tonight, their webinar, because it said that I could ask questions. So my question was, where's Yves Engler? So yeah, so we got to do this. Anyway, I'll shut up now. It's late and I tend to go on and on and on. So I'm better in writing. All right. Thank you.
I'll just briefly mention, because you brought up, Lucy, immigration. I mean, I think that, the way that particularly brown immigrants are being treated now, the amount of racism that's being targeted towards them. And I've written a bit about the Bill C-2, which is the Strong Borders Act that was introduced under the Carney government, and how it will significantly make it more difficult for refugees to pursue asylum. If individuals come here, they have within a 1 year gap of coming here to make an asylum claim. They've already closed off the loopholes from the land entry from U.S. to Canada, where you can make an asylum claim. And I think one of the main issues that we're seeing is that this notion, once again, that immigrants are taking our jobs, and in areas like the Greater Toronto area, where I'm familiar with, there's a serious congestion crisis. There's a housing crisis. There's a congestion crisis. But that's also because of the fact that there has been a lack of investment by the federal government in housing in areas such as Northern Ontario, which is significantly underdeveloped in terms of infrastructure housing. If you invested significantly there, you create more jobs, you create more opportunities, and then you would compel people to then move into those areas. And then this would take pressure off of the housing market, off of the rental market. And so I felt that discussion was not really had. And the frustration that I think a lot of people have with immigrants, it's like, I understand the frustration, and in some ways I sympathize with it. But I feel that the frustration is being misdirected. It's being targeted towards brown immigrants predominantly, when they should be targeted at the federal government for its ineffective policy, where Trudeau let in so many immigrants, but he did not have an effective housing policy, and effective infrastructure policy to invest in public housing, so that it would offset the pressure from the housing market. So I felt that discussion really needed to be had, and it's really a shame that it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the not funding public housing for the last 30 years is a bigger contributor to housing prices going up, and that then new refugees or immigrants, and that's obviously something that's not just a Trudeau, but that's a Harper, Trudeau, Chrétien. I guess maybe even going, yeah, I guess started with Paul Martin and Chrétien, but. If there aren't any
Mulrooney,
other,
actually, but yeah,
what?
It started with Mulrooney, actually.
Yeah. So that was an interesting debate. I think it made the case that we really do need to be part of this campaign that capitalism can't be fixed. Onwards to a socialist future is which of course is our platform, is a necessary part of this discussion. And I think what we need to do is redouble our efforts to make sure that we are included in the next debate and we are included in other party platforms organized in the coming weeks and months, and that the important subject matter that we've been campaigning on over the past 4 months, that it gets a proper airing, or I mean, even a little bit of airing. I think, considering what we had tonight, in these upcoming platforms and debates and discussions, and because this is, I think this is terrible for the NDP to not talk about militarism, but it's even worse for the country, and it's certainly not good for the world either. So we absolutely have to keep pushing. This weekend, there are International Solidarity Day of Solidarity with Palestinian People on Saturday. I know there's a big demonstration in Toronto. Here in Montreal, there's a big opposition to the CAQ government's war against working class people. I'm going to be at that demonstration. There's going to be a Palestine contingent in that demonstration. So if you're here in Montreal, I believe there are Palestine demos happening in other cities across the country on Saturday that people should go out to. And I just, maybe one other thing, also, that there was a pre-dawn raid against a bunch of activists, anti-war activists, on Tuesday morning, including somebody I've done lots of stuff with, David Heap. I believe his father was a NDP MP back in the day, and Rachel Small from World Beyond War Canada. So people should check out what's happening there and provide different forms of support if you can. But I guess from the standpoint of our campaign, it's onwards. They made the case for us that we are absolutely a necessary part of this NDP leadership race, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure that our platform, our ideas are put out there. And I believe there's a lot of NDP members, that want to hear these ideas and have a lot of sympathy for these ideas. I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and everyone who's been part of this discussion. Onwards.